integrating HealthTech into our current healthcare ecosystems. What does the future hold?
So, good afternoon, everyone. I am Jessica Schkembri-Higgins, a general surgery trainee, and it is my pleasure to be moderating this panel among such distinguished professionals. So, can I ask you to introduce yourselves briefly, please?
Robert Schwirep. I am a cardiologist and now the CEO of the Foundation for Medical Services responsible for healthcare infrastructure in Malta.
Hi, I'm Philip. Hello, I'm Philip Taylor. I'm Professor of Fixed and Removable Prosthodontics at Queen Mary University of London, and I'm the immediate past Dean of the Faculty of Dental Surgery of the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh.
Hi, good afternoon again. I'm Brendan Cicluna. I'm a resident academic and principal investigator at the University of Malta. My expertise is in experimental internal medicine and human immunology.
So I would like to extend all of you a warm welcome. Prof. Zarbadami, I'm going to give you over my seat so I can look over to you guys. We have a brief introduction? I know we've met you in the last lecture.
Hi, my name is Chris Zarbadami. I'm a professor at the University of Malta and the University of Oxford. My specific expertise is actually astronomy. I build radio telescopes. And what I've done over the past 2 or 3 years, at least since COVID, was pivot from radio astronomy and using the signal processing techniques in radio astronomy towards healthcare.
So, thank you. To echo the Minister's words, change is the only constant, and we are currently living through a digital revolution. Healthcare is currently being transformed by the digital world, and this is helping us to enhance the delivery of healthcare, our outcomes, as well as to empower our patients. What are your thoughts on this?
Shall I take it on? Okay. Well, change is always inevitable, and we've seen that advances in technology, be it molecular profiling coming from my world, or Professor Zarbadami's with his sensors, and also Professor Taylor's new technology for dentistry. These are outstanding achievements, and they will only be of benefit to our patients and the elderly in particular. As we know, and also from Professor Zarbadami's lecture, we see that there is now a top-heavy distribution, which means that there are several health challenges that we face. And only by integrating the health tech that what we're here for, together with what we already know. I mean, health tech on its own is not going to solve all the problems. We have learned a lot so far, also through Gray's Anatomy or Lubert Streyer's biochemistry books. All of this will be fed into what Minister Abela has mentioned, as well as these fancy AI algorithms. Whether they work or not, we're not sure yet, because they sure overfit and hallucinate a lot. But one thing's for sure, is that we're heading in the right direction. And I must say that this kind of conference is really needed, and I'm happy that it's a yearly enterprise.
Yes, Prof. Taylor?
And I just wonder whether we've got to be a little bit careful that we're not running away with ourselves with some of these things. And I think particularly in the field that I was putting forward to in dentistry, there are some things that new students can become very dependent on the technology and not really understand why we were doing it in the first place. So some of the things that I told you about, there are old-fashioned ways of doing it, which were actually good learning algorithms for the student to actually really understand what was happening. Yes, it's great that you can do things by a touch of a button, but understanding why you're doing it might be more important. And if we don't do that, I just wonder whether that's going to stunt any further intellectual growth in any area. Because if you don't understand it, how are you going to put together a research path for something?
I fully agree.
I agree, and I believe it is important that we look at health tech as a tool rather than as this thing which is going to replace the clinician's knowledge and the skill. Dr. Shwireb, any thoughts from your end?
When it comes to cardiology, technology has just dramatically changed the way we treat our patients. When I was a medical student, when I sat for my MRCP, the stethoscope was the king and do it all. Nowadays, we wonder, is there still a use for the stethoscope? Because with ultrasounds, which are held at the bedside, portable echocardiograms, we can have a look at the heart function, the valves, septal defects at the touch of a button. And this has changed completely the way we manage our patients. So technology in cardiovascular care has dramatically changed the treatment of our patients. It's not only in diagnosis, if it comes to treatment itself. Valve disease, aortic stenosis, before was dependent on surgical aortic valve replacement. Elderly may not have been candidates for this form of treatment because they would not have been fit enough to undertake such an important operation. Nowadays, we implant a new valve through the groin under local anesthesia while actually talking to the patient. So again, technology has dramatically changed the care of the cardiovascular care of our patients. So, and it's endless. So if it's pacemaker, if it's implantable cardiac devices, if it's loop recorders, we can get them to monitor from home. We'll know whether they've had arrhythmia, whether they've had an ICD shock, just while the patient's at home, and following morning we'll have all the data in our computer on what's happening with the patients. So yes, technology has dramatically changed the way we care for our patients.
So going from changing the care of our patients back to the innovator at the very start, Prof. Zarbadami, we know you've been involved in a lot of projects in HealthTech. So I believe an idea just doesn't have to be only innovative and interesting. It also has to be useful and acceptable to the patient. What can you tell us about that and the development of health technology?
So basically, the way I see this, and I agree with all what the speaker said, is that technology is definitely a tool, and at the end of the day, you're at the hands of the clinician. But besides the technology revolution and the sensors and the data acquisition, what I've seen is a much bigger, wider sharing of data across a global thing. So now we can begin to understand how populations age, population disease. And I think, for example, from my perspective, which is a very naive perspective, right, is that one of the revolutions, at least, of 20th century medicine was this understanding of population disease, of, for example, bringing in things like vaccines and understanding population. And I think, what AI and the revolution of technology is giving us is this deeper insights of things that have seen, all these different patients and things. But at the end of the day, I think we are very far from replacing a clinician and the clinician's diagnosis to solely an AI tool. I think AI will be a tool, will be an assistant in the same way for example, tasks I used to give to my PhD students, I now give them to ChatGPT. My siblings work on the NHS, and they tell me, the administrative load of carrying out a case is so large, it takes longer than carrying out the surgical operation. So this sort of stuff I see should be all sent to AI and give the clinician and the things who are really the deep experts. AI is at the moment at least, it's very broad and very shallow. We still need the deep experts in the field to really pick out those little, 0.1%, 0.01% that, for example, a 40-year-old GP can understand, or a cardiologist has been working, can pick up these things, because the data sets are still not rich enough. And even though maybe they will become rich enough in the future, we're still very far from that.
Agreed. So to summarize, I believe the sharing of data and improvement in the existing data sets will actually help us to improve the intelligence of AI. But at the end of the day, even AI itself is dependent on the clinician. We mentioned data, and I believe this sharing of data actually poses an ethical question and dilemma. What about data protection and privacy? This is a new challenge which I think we are encountering.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with Professor Zarpadami in data sharing as being integral to medicine moving forward and healthcare in general. We've seen how the UK Biobank, for example, has been tremendous in shaping at least some of our testable hypotheses. Myself as an experimentalist, I take this data and I test it out in the labs. And if this holds true, we run with it. If it doesn't, then we just stop and we reevaluate. With respect to the introduction of AI, we are nowhere near the amount of data and granularity required to efficiently train AI algorithms. The current algorithms are indeed shallow, and we're focusing on language models. But we need to gather more data and feed them indeed into these AI algorithms to train them. We know they overfit and we know they hallucinate. The critical issue is indeed those who can develop AI algorithms may use it in, let's say, evil ways to identify people. Unfortunately, we already encountered or experienced such a breach with respect to the 23andMe US company, who were providing a service to a person, an individual, telling this individual his ethnic or her ethnic background. Their databases were hacked using a very sophisticated algorithm that touched upon, wasn't fully AI apparently, but it was close. And they retrieved, unfortunately, data, this was also in the news, pertaining to Jewish individuals. So this is where we really need to be careful, and I saw a stand here with AI solutions to data protection, and we need to really invest in these. More so than investing in, for example, the more traditional ways of data protection.
So, Dr. Shwireb, in your opinion, what are safe strategies that we can implement to actually integrate health tech in our current healthcare system safely, while at the same time protecting our patients?
So, before I answer your question, I'd like to go back to the AI concept. There is always a fear amongst us healthcare professionals that AI and computer medicine and robots will be taking over our profession. It will actually be giving us an opportunity to practice our profession. Because at the end of the day, we are not just scientists, but medicine is also an art. And this will give us the opportunity to have more time with our patients, to be able to explain better and focus more on what we now talk of personalized medicine and a patient-centered decision. Unfortunately, with today's work, we very often are inundated with entering data, not giving us time to sit down with our patients and explain really the interventions, the advantages of doing the intervention, and the complications which may arise. So AI will assist us in taking care and showing compassion and empathy with our patients. It will obviously also help us in much more detail to be able to care for our patients. And AI interpretation on an ECG will definitely give us much more information that a world of experience of any cardiologist will be able to get throughout their career. So AI is there to help us. Safeguarding the data, yes, that is always a huge concern. Data falling in the wrong people's hands, yes. We have to look into GDPR. We have to really ensure that all necessary algorithms are in situ to protect the patient's data.
Prof. Taylor, any thoughts on this subject?
Yeah, I think anonymization of data is a real problem for people, because somewhere that the person's name will be recorded. So I think the problem that you've got is whatever system you've got, there's going to be a potential risk or a breach. I suppose that even in the paper world, that was the case. Somebody could have broken into the hospital. And in fact, we know that that happened. It's happened in the UK. We've had, fairly recently, the 4 or 5 of the major hospitals in London were virtually closed down because we had a virus in the software. The software is rubbish in the first place, but it was the problem was that we just actually then couldn't even treat our patients because you couldn't get something on the screen to actually find out what that patient was. So that's a real danger, and especially when you get to elderly patients who come in, they've forgotten what drugs they're on, they go into emergency rooms, and you've got this person in front of you, and you're virtually starting from the beginning again. So we do have to be careful about how we're going to do it. The exciting thing, though, is that every one of us probably in this room in our pockets has got a very powerful phone. And if you think about what we could do and the data analysis that could happen to you personally to give you some sort of influence, and it's giving it to the patient to actually make some decisions around it. If we could actually utilise that better, and we're starting to see it, there's an advert on British TV where there's something where you can actually record your cardiac rhythm. There's not much use if you can't actually read the output, but I think it then identifies whether you've got arrhythmias or whatever, which is quite clever if it works. I don't know how good it is, but that sort of thing, it would be great, wouldn't it? And if you could actually do that, from my own point of view, if you could actually just wave a sort of electronic mirror around the mouth, why go to the dentist? I've just shot myself in the foot, haven't I? But what you said about actually being concerned about practicing, I think is right. It's interesting, actually, and you probably would be squirming in your seats to know that in China, there have got robots that are actually drilling teeth.
So I confirm, Professor Taylor, there are now wearables. A simple ring can actually record the ECG, give you data, pick up atrial fibrillation. In most patients, atrial fibrillation is asymptomatic. People don't feel it. And atrial fibrillation, we all know, is the main cause of stroke. And once it's being picked up on these wearables, so people can be started on anticoagulants and strokes prevented. So yes, we are already there with wearables, and our patients come over and they would show me an ECG monitor and show me this is not what I usually get, and I had an alarm here. And yes, there's an ECG strip showing atrial fibrillation. The patient may be hypertensive and diabetic, may need anticoagulation, and that wearable may have saved the patient's life.
So I'm going to be a bit more controversial on this topic, right? Because I think that anonymization is over. You know, I don't think you can be anonymous anymore. I think with the amount of data that the people like Google, Facebook, you know, your wearables and things, I think, you know, they can probably identify you as who you are just from the patterns of your data things. I mean, we see this with our radar module that has no facial recognition and things. We can recognize who the person is from their resting heart rate, right? There are 2 people in a home, we can tell which person is which because of their particular physiological and anatomical features. And I think this is going to be very difficult. I honestly think to be truly anonymous in this digital connected world, it's a really difficult thing, you know, unless you're going to be on Robinson Crusoe on an island with no Wi-Fi and no signal, it's going to be impossible not to know who you are. And even then, they probably know when you got onto the island. So I think anonymization is something, you know, that is a battle that has been lost, you know. And I saw this with the NHS giving this very big contract to Palantir, right, which is a big data mining company in the US. You know, these data things, it's really impossible, you know, to be anonymous. I've read an article recently where, you know, if you lose your phone and switch it on, within 24 hours, Google knows it's you. Just from your standard, you know, walking around, which Wi-Fis you connect to, which things like that. So, you know, I think it's going to be very, very difficult to keep these things truly anonymous.
Like every technology, of course, it has its ups and downs, and like you're saying, anonymity is becoming an issue. But I think this, in turn, highlights the importance of us as clinicians who have an access of a wealth of access to patient data to actually be stewards and protect our patients, even from insurance companies, companies seeking patient information. So I believe, as being the owners of the data, or rather being researchers and clinicians who have access to that data, we also have the responsibility of protecting that data and using it for the greater benefit of the patient. We are shortly running out of time. However, yes, tell us, Prof. Taylor.
I've just had a bright idea. This is always dangerous when I have one of these. Perhaps actually we could turn that on its head, what you've just said, and actually the data becomes the responsibility of the patient, not of the hospital. So it's your problem that you've lost your data.
It's your ownership. It's your ownership.
Yes, yeah. It's changed it. Instead of it being a worry for the hospital, why should the hospital worry about it? It's your data, you carry it.
So to bounce back briefly on your presentations earlier, we heard two terms which are very interesting and intriguing to me. One is precision medicine and the other is personalized medicine. Before we break off this panel, can I have your thoughts on the subject and how can this actually improve the healthcare we're delivering to our patients?
Shall I start?
Can, yeah.
Well, I don't know in what order you want to do it. So again, I totally agree, right? That we have to go to personalized precision medicine. I also happen to think that this is the same thing with metabolism, nutrition, and things. We're now coming to a point where we're having this granularity. Of course, with this granularity of personalized precision medicine, you again have to lose the anonymity, right? Because it's a personalized. But this is where I think the expertise of the clinician, of the let's say human in the loop or the human interaction is, I think, not only important, it's essential. Because for all the data, for all the things you have which are based on statistical models, every person is a figure that stands on its own, and you can't judge a whole person just by the population statistics of that it is. It's the same in astronomy. Even though we measure the shapes of galaxies and take the statistics of shapes of galaxies over the world, every galaxy has undergone its own situation to get there. And it's the same with medicine. All the genetic profile and things has to be personalized, and that's what will make only personalized medicine will make it precise.
Dr. Shikluna, your work with sepsis is very interesting and quite astounding, to be honest. And I think it perfectly highlights precision medicine, that we're targeting a particular situation, in this case sepsis, which is a potential killer and which is lethal to the patients, and we're actually improving the outcomes. Can you tell us a bit more about that, very briefly?
Yes, absolutely. And of course, I'm biased. The one-size-fits-all paradigm does not work. And we've been facing this paradigm for years, and of course, questions always arise. Who's going to benefit? Who's going to be harmed? So we cannot just sit idly and without changing the situation. And looking into the technology that's being developed, it's potentiating the personalized and precision medicine. But there is a difference between the two. So when we're looking at precision medicine, this is more assisting our clinicians, the hospitals, to better understand a patient's condition, be it in sepsis, for example. One of the big questions was who out of all these patients is going to develop an ICU-acquired infection over and above a burns trauma, for example. And in that sense, will this patient benefit from a particular immune-modulating antibiotic, for example? We've seen how antibiotics themselves can be harmful, clindamycin being one of the heaviest, for example. And so precision medicine is there to assist clinicians in deciding who is going to benefit or be harmed. Personalized medicine goes deeper than that. And this is where genetics comes in, genetic background. Epigenetics, up-and-coming fields, emerging technologies are quite astounding, in particular epitranscriptomics, where the message is not only from the inheritance point of view, but the way the environment is interacting with our genome itself. We have technologies now that enable us to measure this, and we can then tell whether a person is at high risk of a certain disease, for example, or a certain syndrome.
Prof. Taylor?
Yeah, precision means something completely different to me. Precision's what I'm all about, really. That's what a prosthodontist does. We make precise fitting prostheses for teeth. And in fact, we've got to the stage with CAD-CAM where we can actually print crowns that are actually too tight to fit. So in the past, our worry was when we were making it the old-fashioned way, where we were casting them and putting them into ovens and all sorts of things, you actually had a gap which was too large. And now we've got a gap that's too small, so you can't actually fit it. So we've had to build into the software some give, if you like, to allow us to actually fit it. Because if you want to cement it, you've got to have some room for the cement. Otherwise, it doesn't fit. So to me, we're talking it's a different world of precision.
Context specific.
It's a different understanding of the word precision, I think.
So precision comes a lot into interventional cardiology. Gone are the days when we see a lesion and we just throw a stent in. Nowadays, we assess the lesion with pressure wires inside the coronary arteries, knowing whether it's significant or not. And then if it's significant, we've got ultrasound, intravascular ultrasound, so we go in with these tiny probes inside the coronary arteries, assess the artery, assess the anatomy, the sizing of the artery, and precisely deploy a stent exactly to the area needed of the coronary artery.
Thank you very much. So to conclude, I would like to actually pick on two words that Dr. Shwirab has mentioned, which are compassion and empathy. And I think it's very important that as we move on to embrace this health tech revolution, we do not forget to be human. Because ultimately, our patients want to be treated efficiently, yes, effectively, but with care, with compassion, and it is in us in whom they trust, and we have to be worthy of that trust. Do we have any questions from the audience? All right, thank you very much. This has been an excellent discussion. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here, and I wish the rest of you a pleasant afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.